Hey, it's a new world, gotta adapt to it. Innovation, information, more than the average. Rushing, please ignore the interruptions, cause this is digital discussions.
What's up, everybody? So welcome to this episode of Digital Discussions. I have an old friend on today. I'm super excited to catch up with Erica Spiegelman, the author, the wellness expert, all other things. And we're going to talk today, Erica, about it's Mental Health Awareness Month, right? So I'm excited to have you on and talk about all things about mental health and mental health awareness. And then obviously tying that into what's going on today with COVID-19 and the heightened anxiety that everybody's experiencing as a result of that. But if you could, maybe just give us a little bit of your background and about Rewired and so on.
So a couple things. Professionally, I'm an addiction counselor. So I do therapy, one-on-one sessions with families, couples, individuals to help them get on a path of health and create a program for them, an individualized program where they can rewire the pathways in their brain so that they could create healthy habits and they could begin to understand how to have these foundational practices like boundaries and healthy communication and good relationships and authenticity and learning about their thought habits. And so all these things I teach in order for people to create basically a new blueprint for their life. And so I do that in one-on-one sessions. I also write books about that. I have a book called Rewired. I have 2 workbooks, an adult coloring book and a new book that came out last year called The Rewired Life, which is talks about basically self-care and emotional awareness. And it's, the chapters are on technology, sleep, nutrition, movement, again, communication and boundaries, time management, just kind of basic things about self-care, really like a full 360 degree perspective on how we can practice self-care and how we could incorporate it day to day. So that's basically what my whole life is about. I walk the walk. I live that. I live what I teach. I got sober myself at 27 years old, and it's been, a good 13 years. So it's something that I, have done myself and I continue to do. And it's not just about sobriety and not drinking. It's more about having non-negotiables and making a pact with myself, a sacred pact that I'm never going to betray myself again. I'm not going to betray my body. I'm not going to betray, being in a relationship I don't want to be in, and all these other things, which we could talk about more. But I think that is kind of the key to mental health, is to kind of figure out your values and what you want to do and how you want to live, and then go forward with that. So.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that it's so important. And I think that as time goes on, and obviously we went to college together, and we in a major party school like the University of Arizona, and we had such a great time, and like most people in college, but I think our experience was probably more fun than a lot of people who choose to go to school in colder climates.
Right.
I'm obviously biased based on our experience, but it's interesting.
It was a great time. Yeah.
It was a great time, but it's interesting because, well, shortly after college, I lost my mother. So yeah, of course. But it was part of, my journey and hitting rock bottom myself as a result of that. And then realizing that, it's the grieving process is interesting too, because you could turn to alcohol and drugs to numb yourself, when you're dealing with tragedy like that.
Right.
And I definitely did not want to be, in touch with reality through that, so I definitely was drinking more than ever through that, and hit rock bottom myself. And then kind of stopped feeling sorry for myself at a certain point. It's easy dealing with such a tragic event like that to think that you have an excuse to act any way that you want to, right? All I have to say to somebody is, Mr. Officer, I just lost my mom. I'm sorry, whatever. And, so from there, it was such an eye-opening experience to myself. And I've really been on a personal development and self-care, just regimen myself for it's been basically 20 years, over 20 years now.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that, as I continue to meet high functioning people that live an optimized lifestyle,
Yeah.
the most common thing they have in common is that they don't drink. They're basically high on life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, I think, hats off to you. You could drink in moderation. And if it's part of your life, I'm never someone that's, even with my clients, like if you're exploring not drinking, that's fine too. It's a relationship that you create, right? We had a relationship with alcohol, and it's really important you acknowledge that. Just like any other break, it takes a time to kind of figure out how you want to move forward with this relationship, what you want to do. But what I like to tell my clients too, and for me too, it's a choice. And so like when people say, oh, you don't drink, it's like, no, I choose not to drink. It's not like I can't drink. I can drink. I still can if I wanted to, but it's a choice, and for me, it becomes more of an empowered choice. And I feel empowered by saying that. I feel proud of myself too, for making a choice that I know will only help me in the long run. Like, if I choose another path, which I could, I know it's going to destroy my life, really. I mean, maybe not day one, maybe not even after a week, or maybe never, but even if there's a 1% chance I get back to a place of spiritual, bankruptcy, I don't want to go back there again.
Sure.
So I choose to just, not have it be part of my life, and
Right.
So again, everybody, I think, is kind of dealing with what those relationships look like, whether it's food or with gambling or what, it's just like we act out. Like us as human beings, we need like a vehicle to act out, and not all the time does acting out have to be self-destructive in terms of drugs or alcohol or overeating or spending all our money. Like it could be exercising, it could be, writing and putting your energy into something more creative,
For sure. And I think that right now with what everybody's dealing with, with this pandemic, there's just a heightened sense of anxiety.
Yeah.
Everybody has a heightened sense of anxiety because anything that was normal, your routine that was normal, your relationships that you were used to, obviously.
The routine in your relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think now it's funny because for me, it's every day is like a different journey. I'm so much more emotional right now, like meaning, emotions are such a bigger part of my day where I'm having highs and lows a lot more frequently than I typically would. I'm pretty even keeled typically. Yeah. And it's funny because, I will still drink on occasion and have a couple of drinks type thing. Like I haven't, I've gone through prolonged periods of intentionally not having any alcohol. But I have a healthy relationship today where I have a drink if I'm at a social event or whatever it is. And, but it's funny because when I do that, the next day, even if I have one or two drinks, I'm a little less clear and I'm a little, more on edge and I'm a little, it's just not productive. There's nothing about it that is productive and there's no positive thing to come out of it. There's no good decisions that are made after a certain time of night or after a certain amount of drinks, right?
Yeah, so right, totally. But you know what? It's interesting. Like when we were talking about it, I'm thinking about us back in college and how, I think I remember your group of friends and the guys and my girlfriends and the things that went on there. And it's like the drinking just completely shuts down your emotional awareness, like your emotional intellect. Like it's like you can't even grow emotionally because you're hungover half the whole next day, then you're going out the next night, or you have like 1 or 2 days to recover, not enough really. So again, it's like, for kids now or young adults and people like that are in this habitual habits, like, that are maybe not destructive per se yet, but just keep in mind, anyone that's listening to this is like, just make sure you're still honoring yourself emotionally, that you're not shutting down. I remember our guy friends used to fight all the time, like physically, like get into fights, and everybody was like, into their pride, and it was like ego, and it wasn't really anything grounded. It wasn't really about learning who you are, which college is supposed to be that time of your life, not kind of shut down who you are and lead with your ego. But not that there's anything wrong with it. I look back and I'm like, Jesus, I didn't allow myself to really emotionally grow at that time because of the alcohol, you know?
Oh, completely. I had the same experience to the point where, like, today, I barely recognize my old self. If I'll look back at photos of
Yeah.
college, you know, I've gone through such a transformation in
Yeah.
all aspects of my life
Yeah.
that, and it's funny when I'll talk to people that I don't speak to for a while from childhood or college, or, you know, even that phase after college, which, you know, is basically still like college, just
Right. Did it. I moved to New
planted
York. Yeah.
so, you know, you're still doing the same stuff, and you're still, you know, out all night doing, you know, bad things, and basically waking up the next day and wanting to sleep the entire day. I mean,
Hi.
there was a big chunk of my life that I was not out of bed before, call it 4 p.m. I
Me
mean,
too.
it's
Years.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's and to now to like wake up every morning and eat the frog, right? Like do the toughest things first, right out of the gate. You know, I try to get out of bed within a short amount of time. Like no matter what, you know, it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
I will not delay getting out of bed and getting right into my workout and getting right into, you know,
Yeah.
practice gratitude and mindfulness, and, you know, starting off every day like that and having
Yeah.
this disciplined routine, no
Yes.
matter how, if you feel less than great that day, you almost can't let it take over your entire day, because you're going through things that are definitely going to lift you up.
Yeah.
Shifting energy, basically.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. And I think it's so important to like just give people hope too, that maybe like, you know, I said to myself, like, God, I'll never be able to be routine. Like that's what I thought in the beginning before I changed my life and got on this self-care path, right? But it's like so much easier when, and that's what Rewired is about, really. That's my first book was about, is like it's learning that we're like, in terms of neuroplasticity, like our brains aren't hardwired, we're very soft wired. You really can create through repetition, and you have to be repetitive with this. It's not going to just happen if you do it for a day or 2 days, but if you repeatedly do something every single day, get up at 6 a.m., set your alarm, have your clothes out on the floor to go running, get up. This is what I used to do. Get up, put on the clothes, go running, have a healthy breakfast after I cooked. I'd look forward to that, you know. And you're done, like you said, with kind of like, you're beginning the day off with care, and that way everything else kind of flows from there. It's like a domino effect, you know.
Absolutely.
And if you do that every day for months on end, it's going to become automatic, and it's not going to feel hard. It's going to feel like this is who I am. And, you know, I love this saying. It's like we are what we do, not what we say we're going to do. So I tell people this is like, you know, if I run every day, I am a runner, and I could stand strong and be like honest with people now and be like, I run every day. It's not like I'm bullshitting people like I used to. Like, yeah, I exercise. I go to the gym. Right? I didn't once a month. Like no, like you know.
Totally.
So again, it feels good to identify and not and label yourself in healthy ways, not in unhealthy ways. You know.
Totally. And I think it's funny that you say that, because it resonates so much with me, because as I got sick of the destructive behavior, you know,
Yeah.
I was always able to function at a pretty high level, you know, before I'll say, like, I just feel like I found some sort of clarity
Yeah.
where I realized that focusing on self-care is not selfish. It actually
Yeah.
benefits everybody around you.
Right.
And a lot of people who don't really get that
Yeah.
think that you're actually being selfish, when
Right.
you're actually, I think that if you don't practice self-care, you're not going to find happiness, you're not going to find clarity,
Yeah.
and it have a negative impact on everybody around you, and ripple effect from there. So
Yeah.
I think it's so important. And I always say to people who don't really get that concept, it's basically the same thing as putting on your oxygen mask on a plane first, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Take care of yourself. How are you going to help everybody else?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you know, I mean, having kids too, I have babies now. I have a 5-month-old and I have a 16-month or 17-month-old. So for me, I'm still on the months. Like, you know, it's like
Yeah,
these kids are little. And for me, like I have to have sufficient energy every day. Like I have to have energy, and I want to be happy for them, and I want to be and I want, you know, like I was just saying about to my husband about my 5-month-old. It's just like, you know, her blueprint, even though she may not remember me being happy every day, it's her blueprint is going to be based on positive vibration and energy that she feels from her parents. And that's what kind of makes human beings. And a lot of the work that I've studied when I went back to UCLA to get this degree, I studied, how, usually our psychological problems and emotional problems occur between the ages of 0 to 3, and it's really about kind of like, it's not necessarily, you could obviously have traumas and have issues, like your parents get divorced or someone gets sick and, after 3 years old, but really 0 to 3 is kind of like the foundation of the person's nurturing. And it's just important to, like, for me to take care of myself so I could give them that, so like you're saying, it bleeds into like all parts of your life. Sometimes you don't even realize,
No, definitely. And I feel like as a parent going through this right now, my boys are a little older. I have an 8 and a 5-year-old, and they're two very, they got a lot of energy, and they're just constantly like need to be entertained. And, they're jumping all over each other, and you're splitting them up all day and reprimanding them. And, it's been tougher also the last few months dealing with this.
I bet.
And also trying to have the patience. Yeah. Because again, my schedule's off. Like it's interesting because this past weekend, like I'm not used to being home so much. And initially I was like, this is going to be nice. Like I'm going to spend more time with the family. I'm going to be able to take things down a notch. And that was great for a few days, maybe a week. And then I was like, wait a minute. Now I feel like I'm losing steam. I'm falling behind.
Yeah.
And I kept my exercise regimen, as much as I could, my diet and everything the same, my waking up schedule, my going to bed. And then it started to shift. Like I just wasn't getting up as early because I didn't need to get up as early. Right. And I like let myself go a little bit. And then, it's funny, this past Monday, Memorial Day, like going through the Memorial Day weekend and not really having much of a Memorial Day weekend. Yeah. Typically I come straight from a Vegas conference. My family meets me in LA, and we hang out in LA, and we have a great time and, catch up with old friends, new friends, and have such a wonderful experience. This was like hanging out around the house, not knowing if we can meet up with people, making social distance plans and then canceling them because it's like, what's the point? And I came into Tuesday getting my day started, and I was in such a funk, and that's like rare for me.
Yeah.
But I've definitely had a tough time just dealing with the lack of stimulation and being social.
Yeah.
Are you experiencing, through this period of time, are you experiencing different emotional swings than you would?
I have to say probably, maybe a little bit. I think it's giving me more time to reflect on the changes of my life of just being a new mom of 2 now, and having a baby only 5 months ago, and kind of, but because of that, I had her in December, and this started in March. So it was a couple months of being at home with a baby as you would. So not much has changed. And my husband and I really don't go out to eat a lot. We, because we had my son the year before. And thank God we just moved. So we have a house. So we actually have room to like live and be outside. And we live across from a mountain and a lake, so there's things to do locally, but it hasn't changed that much. What I think has changed for me, at least in terms of anxiety or just not having something to look forward to in terms of travel. Like I really been a traveler for so long, and whether it's just like a short getaway for the weekend, I crave like, seeing, experiencing new like places and people, and, and kind of not being able, like we had a wedding to go to this summer, gone, we had, rescheduled, we had everything, like, which just fell right into a summertime. I mean, I think for me, that's been the hardest, is kind of like, I always look forward to a trip or a wedding, or, we have something going on always in the summer. So.
Totally. And at our stage, we have to keep the kids really like busy.
Yeah.
They're already at a point now where they're just starting to, to just do the same. Every day is Groundhog's Day. Yeah. And for us, listen, in New York, like the summer's a big deal because we don't have the weather. you know? So
know.
now we're coming into like the nice weather, it's beautiful out, and it's so limited what we're
Yeah.
able to do. Like, are we going to rent a house? Are we comfortable renting a house in the Hamptons? Yes, no, maybe, let's do it, let's not do it, you know? So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're at a point literally.
But, I think, Jay, you mentioned something that's important too. I think this is such an there's unknown territory in general about making decisions. And, you're responsible as the father of the family, and I'm sure as your wife or as being the mom, of making a decision for your family. And it's your health, which is like something we've never had to really do before. It's like, should we go rent somewhere? Is that dangerous? Could I get something that way? Should we be engaging? I mean, it's all this is. I think now, especially with things reopening up, people have to make these personal decisions based on their own values. Like, just because so and so, your best friends, are letting their kids play with other kids, does that mean you want to do that? Like, is that going to make you nervous and worried? And, I think even between couples, from what I've experienced with my clients, and I've been doing these Rewired workshops, which I could tell you about, but I've been doing them so separately, but I've been hearing this a lot in the workshops. I've been doing them for corporate companies. So like last week I did a workshop for a big advertising firm, and it was only 15 people in their group. But, I think people that are certain corporations and companies, whatever, if you're big or small, like, give back to your employees right now and give them a workshop for self-care. And that's what I do. I do an hour-long workshop, and I do it through Zoom. And I usually do it in person, but now it's through Zoom. And I've done like 6 of them since this has happened.
Are you finding that they're actually more like it's something that's even more necessary now than
Yes. Yeah. Because before, people were like, oh yeah, it's nice. Employee benefits, I need to put a certain amount into that, every year. But this is like, people are struggling, people nervous about their jobs. People are making these decisions, like you and I were just talking about, personal decisions for their families, for their own health. And I think that's putting so much stress on them personally. And then they have the stress from work, and then not knowing if they're going to have jobs, or, how it's just, there's so much going on. So I've really appreciated meeting new people, not through the treatment world, not because people are addicted to something, which is, the world I was in before, but now I'm doing it more in the corporate level, day-to-day people that still need to focus on their self-care. So
absolutely. And obviously, even before the pandemic, just wellness in general and mindfulness are kind of a new frontier. I feel like, I do a lot of work in the fitness space.
yeah.
And, fitness has always been very popular, right? So, but I feel like mindfulness is right now so important, and it ties into self-care. It ties into everything.
Yeah.
And, finding happiness. Like, at the end of the day, success to me is happiness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important, people like yourself are really doing an amazing thing, because if you're not, I think some people are also too concerned about talking about, being human and feeling less than perfect, and it's, I think this period of time will allow people to actually speak more about that, and I was excited to have you on, specifically on digital discussions, because we have so many conversations about, what's going on in business, what's going on with companies not being able to pay rent, what's going on. And, it's conversations like this that my audience doesn't get to see, as much of with me, where, you're not talking as much about the struggles, the emotions that you're going through,
Yeah.
and I think it's really important that people, men and women, understand that it's okay to feel like, man, I'm off. I'm not having a good day. I'm not, and also, to your point, I'm sure a lot of people are turning to alcohol and drugs, and, especially now with the economy being closed in so many states for so long, and where their next paycheck's coming from.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, I have some clients that are not drinking now for the first time, and it's been helpful because bars are shut and it's not as easy to get to alcohol. And then there's people that obviously have already developed these dependencies on drugs or alcohol, and it just makes it worse because they're not ready to quit. So yes, that is going in that direction too. But like you said, I think I really do see a shift. I started this workshop with Salesforce. Salesforce hired me last summer to do it. And I was pregnant. I was traveling. I did it in New York. I did it in Toronto. I did it at their offices in San Francisco, Indianapolis, and I went into each Salesforce office, and there was 20 to 30 people that signed up, and I did it in person. So I was traveling doing this workshop, and I could see in person, people are like, I would ask a question like, who in here is proactive or reactive with their health? Like, who goes to see a doctor when something's wrong, reactive or proactive? Who goes to a doctor regularly and is, does, and everybody that was like reactive was like, and then they all kind of looked at each other. And then, by the end we were talking about boundaries and personal relationships, and people were just like sharing and going, and they warmed up. And I think it was a safe space, which I have to, create for them. And I have to say, like, listen, anything you say here is confidential. But really I saw, which was amazing to see, is that people really are burning the candle on both ends, or they're just burnt out at work and they're not taking care of themselves, and they feel like crap every day, and it's affecting their work, and it's affecting their relationships, and they were able to talk about it, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
And Salesforce, I have to say, is such a great company because they do have such a desire to have their employees be healthy. Like they put gyms in their buildings. Maternity leave is 4 or 5 months paid, for women. It's like, it's one of those companies that really does invest a lot, and also encourages you to share. So I think that's why people were really open, but I think it should be going on more, like you said.
So based on your experience with different companies now, are there some tips maybe that you would give business owners? Because there's a lot of business owners that watch. Are there tips that you would consider suggesting them implementing into their workplace?
Yeah, I think in general, it's a good policy to have of, if you have a problem, whether that personal, mental, any kind of issue health-wise, to come to me, no judgment, and we can pay for a session with a counselor, or we can somehow get you help that's affordable for you, or bring in a workshop, bring in someone like me to come in and give you a refresh and give you some, tools. I send people workbooks afterwards, so they each have something to take home with them. I would tell business owners to try and communicate and start a conversation and ask feedback. Like, how are you guys doing emotionally? Like, are you stressed? Like, what's going on? Are you anxious about work? Or do you have any questions for me? So many people don't want to ask, like, whether their job's in jeopardy because they're afraid to hear the answer. But if a boss says, hey, let's all get on a group conference call to, next week. I want to be transparent, tell everyone what's really going on. The truth is always what people want to hear, So I encourage people to just not pretend like nothing's going on, communicate.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because, it's tough to, as a business owner and a boss, it's tough to have those conversations sometimes with people, and, also having the bandwidth and the time to focus on, all of the moving parts and the challenges, and have these, real human interactions with your people. But it's so important. I led us through this transition, through coronavirus, with full transparency. I did not always have positive things to say, or I was not always delivering, good news. But I also agree that I think it's really important to be transparent and talk about, where the company's financial position, what the strategy is, and how everybody needs to band together to get, out of this time period and work together. But yeah, it's a great suggestion.
And feedback is always, when an employee feels heard, it's like you give the gift of everything. It's just like giving someone a chance to give feedback. If you say, hey, give me some feedback. What am I doing? Actually, I was hired by a treatment center, a big treatment center in Austin, Texas. I flew out there a couple years ago, and I did a self-care workshop with their staff. So it was all their therapists, psychologists, counselors, hypnotherapists, everyone that worked at this center. And there was a lot of employees. And the boss said to me, the owner said, I want you to ask them, I want you to teach what you teach and then ask them for feedback on what's going on with them in terms of their job and what feedback they have for our job, and then report back to me. So I told them that that's what was going to go on, and they did. They had so much feedback for her. She was the CEO.
Yeah.
And I went back to her, and it was all anonymous because it wasn't like so-and-so had to go in and complain about something. So it was anonymous. I said, these are the lists of things that are, going on. And she said, thank you. That she thanked everyone else, said, keep it anonymous. And she actually ended up changing a bunch of things and ways in which her employees were kind of supported. And it was great. I went back there again to do it one more time, and they had like maybe one little complaint, so it's nice to kind of get the feedback.
Yeah, I think, and I really truly believe, companies like Salesforce and Google and, all these companies that are really, really amazing places to work, right? Yeah. That care about, the just the mental, I think the mental and physical and, all the health of their people, right?
Yeah.
And can afford to, give their staff 5 months, maternity leave, whatever it is. But, I think that companies need to be mindful of what people need today to be happy and thrive in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be, even more apparent in this kind of new normal as we come out of this. Mm-hmm. I think, and for Sabre, it's very important to me that, people are able to work on things and in areas that they want to work, because you're never going to be happy if you're doing something that you don't enjoy. And, and I think that there's going to be a new way, especially with a lot of companies continuing to work remotely, even, when things kind of go back to normal. A lot of big companies are saying, listen, we don't see the need. We're being very productive, working remotely and, using these platforms like Zoom. You were doing everything in person, and now you're doing these workshops by Zoom, right? And it's the kind of time and energy it saves to have to, fly to New York and make a presentation. And
totally.
I think that's going to be really interesting, and that companies are going to have to adjust quite a bit to what makes their staff happy and their clients, really everybody.
And what I think it comes down to too, which I have to say, financially, like people don't want to, they don't want to invest in their employees. It's too much to bring someone in, it's like, but it's so much cheaper actually to do it through online. You don't have to pay for my time traveling. You don't have to pay for expenses, anything like that. So, and it's not really, the whole point of this is not about the financial burden of it. It's about, again, like you said, it's just making people feel like their lives matter, like their lives matter. And that, I think today too, it's like this definition, you mentioned success earlier. It's success, makes anyone happy, but we have to kind of figure out what definition success is for you, because like success for Joe Schmo may be like, I do 7 hours of work and I want to go home and be with my family. And that to me feels like a successful day. Whereas, a successful day for this other guy, like I had this one guy speak up at this other media company I did a workshop at recently. And he said, for me, I worked till like 11 o'clock at night, because if I don't do it, my boss is going to give someone else this job or someone else this work. And I want to, and he's just like, so full of fear that his job's going to be, threatened because he's not working his ass off. But meanwhile, he has no balance, so it's like trying to like find a good definition of what success is for you, and then have a good boundary around it. And don't,
Totally. I think that's a great point though, because I feel like the folks who don't have the freedom to actually, to decide what their work schedule is, and who are not either, the owner of a business or, somebody at the highest level, essentially, where, typically those are the people who are so disciplined and driven anyway that they're doing the stuff they don't want to do regardless. And that's why they got where they are, so to speak. But, I think that, and it's funny because, Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know if you're familiar with Gary. Yeah. So he talks a lot about, happiness is basically like finding your own path and being able to make ends meet and earn a living doing what truly makes you happy, as opposed to, making endless amounts of money in fear, working 24 hours a day, in a job that you can't stand. Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I think that if everybody was actually being honest, that, they would really, if they realized their current routine was like just poisonous to their
Yeah.
well-being, and if it wasn't solely about the money,
Yeah.
that they probably wouldn't be happy in that type of an environment.
Right. Totally. I agree. I agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So it's a good thing to kind of think about.
It is. It is. Have you done any retreats, or do you do retreats for companies and things of that nature, or is it just more workshops?
No. I mean, so again for Salesforce, they did a retreat up in Napa, and they had me and other people come in to do like workshops during the retreat. So
Yeah.
the retreat was, so I've done things like that. I haven't had my own retreat like in Bali for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I definitely have been part of, and also it's like when I was working at treatment centers, I was working at Passages, which is a big treatment center in Malibu, and I was teaching groups multiple times a week to the same people, so I couldn't do the same group over and over. So I created so many groups on communication, on boundaries, on time management, and that's kind of what my books became. Because I had to write out all the material for them, and I used to hand out worksheets at these groups, and these groups were like 30 people, very demanding at a high-end treatment center that wanted to get better now, so it was like I had to really create some good content. And so that's kind of what all these workshops now, I mean, this is years later, but again, I've seen the need of like what people need to work on, or want to work on. Yeah.
And well, I saw your last article for Poosh,
Yes.
which was great.
Oh, thank you.
Relationships. It was very eye-opening to read all of the different categories, I guess.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like you don't, again, just with like back to self-care, and sometimes you don't spend enough time focusing on what type of individual you are, and trying to get better at the things that you're not necessarily good at. And I think that a lot of that has to do with self-awareness.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't necessarily totally aware of their strengths and weaknesses. And I always say I seek discomfort, so I force myself into uncomfortable situations just to grow from them. And when you're on this personal development path, that becomes very much it's like, if somebody asks me something that I'm uncomfortable doing, I'm like, yes, yeah, I'll do it. And then I have to worry about it and actually do it, but it makes you really, really understand yourself and grow as a person.
Yeah. I think I don't know, I think maybe we're talking about the attachment article, but so I write for Poosh, which is an online, blog magazine. And like they talk a lot of, they want to know a lot about, which I love to write about too, like our narratives and belief systems, and how that they, how they were formed. And so that attachment article is kind of about seeing, in our childhood, we had, basically maybe two parents, maybe one parent, maybe, but we had caregivers, basic caregivers, and those caregivers behaved in ways which we watched, and that was mirrored to us. And we thought, oh, this is the man I saw growing up, and this is how a man acts, and this is how a man treats a woman, and this is how a relationship is, and this is how, what you hear about money and religion, this is what goes on in my house. And right, so you come out of these experiences as kids, and then you're really shaped and molded by what you see. First, not everything we see and hear is correct, because our parents are just human, and
but you only realize that later in life, right? Like when you're young, you expect that they're perfect on some level.
Right. Yeah, you do. But then you also think, okay, for me, I love my dad. I'm very close to my dad, but he was 25 when he had me. My parents divorced when they were 33 years old. I mean, and then they got remarried. I mean, they had lives and lives and lives. But, I saw my dad, drinking and running around and going out, and, he was a man about town, right? So I thought all men were like that. I mean, I did, So for me, it took me years to kind of work through trust issues around men in general, and do all males act like this, and do you know, and then women too, like seeing, you know, are females all like this. So it's just important in the context of, you know, people's genders, in the context of communication and relationships. Like, what did you see? And like what we're saying now is like, we need to learn how to look at our old thought, like our thoughts around these things, and begin to rewrite stories and rewrite narratives, because not everything that we necessarily thought is true, you know?
Yeah, I think, and that ties, I say it all the time about eating behavior and exercise.
Oh, for sure.
We're completely programmed to believe that you need to not eat and handcuff yourself to a treadmill. And that's how you get in good shape, right?
Well,
like,
that was, who told you that? Society? Your mom, your dad? You have to, like, look at that. Where did this idea come from? Yeah.
that's right. And, you know, I think that people are now starting to realize, you know, more just from a, like, you know, 30,000 foot perspective, like a much higher level,
Yeah.
realize that everything that we've been programmed to believe to be true may not be true. And that's why when I first came across your book and saw what you were doing, you know, first off, Rewired is like the perfect name. So kudos to you. Like, knocked it out of the park with that. And, you know, it's, as I continue to go on my own journey and try to have a positive impact on other people, you know, learning about what you're doing has been really, really amazing. And, you know, we continue to work together and see how we can help each other. And having said that, you know, obviously I'm going to put contact information for you.
Thank
so
you.
where to find you, and
Awesome.
And companies can reach out to you for workshops and things of that nature. And we'll have to set one up at Sabre when I get back from Florida. I would love to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's so nice to connect with you. And it's so nice we get to connect like this, you know?
No, totally. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was great catching up.
You too.
And keep up the great work.
Thank you. You too.
'Cause this is digital discussions.